Hello, and welcome to the Gray Art Gallery's virtual tour of the exhibition Mostly New, Selections from the NYU Art Collection. My name is Samuel Allen. I am a Ph.D. candidate in the history of art and archaeology at NYU's Institute of Fine Arts, and the Graduate Curatorial Assistant at the Gray. Today, I will be guiding you through a selection of highlights from Mostly New. If you would like more information about the show, including its introductory text and additional views of its galleries, you can find these on the Gray's website at grayartgallery.nyu.edu. Mostly New is the Gray's first exhibition since closing temporarily in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Featuring more than 90 artworks by nearly 60 artists, the exhibition foregrounds the collection's strengths in recording the history of New York City's artistic scene, in showcasing contemporary art from the Middle East and Asia, and in presenting a breadth of creative and documentary photographic practices. Though the show is mainly composed of recent acquisitions, it also includes a handful of standout artworks that have been in the collection for a longer period, helping to chart the collection's growth from its creation in 1958 up to the present day. Although the NYU Art Collection was established in 1958, there is a longer history of art on NYU's campus. In 1927, the site currently occupied by the Gray became home to A.E. Gallatin's Gallery of Living Art, later Museum of Living Art, the first American institution to exhibit art by living artists. The NYU Art Collection was initiated a decade and a half later at the urging of Professor Howard S. Conant of NYU's Department of Education. The collection began with the acquisition of two artworks, one of which is seen here at the entrance to the exhibition, Francis Picabia's mechanomorphic drawing, Résonateur, of circa 1922. Picabia was a French avant-garde artist who shared many affinities, stylistically and in his iconoclastic spirit, with the artists who had been displayed at the Museum of Living Art. If this made him a fitting artist with whom to inaugurate the collection, Résonateur was particularly appropriate because Picabia's inspiration for his series of mechanomorphic drawings, which he began in 1915, arose during visits to New York City that helped him realize, as he later recalled, that the genius of the modern world is in machinery. In works such as Résonateur, Picabia represents basic human drives as complex assemblages of interlocking machine parts. The title, Résonateur, refers to a cavity resonator, a hollow enclosure used in electronic devices to contain electromagnetic fields, and an object Picabia represents here in a diagrammatic fashion as a centrally placed, thick, arching black line. While the collection began in 1958, NYU went without a permanent art museum until 1975, when, thanks to a gift from Abby Weed Gray, the gallery's namesake, the Gray Art Gallery opened. Mrs. Gray's gift included a donation of some 700 artworks from the Middle East and Asia. One of her collection's particular strengths was in modern Iranian art. She had acquired 200 objects from Iran, dating primarily from the 1960s, a group that laid the foundation for what is today the largest public holding of Iranian modern art outside of Iran. Mrs. Gray first visited Iran in 1960, at the time of the Second National Biennial of Modern Art in Tehran, a showcase she described as an eye-opener. This spurred her to immerse herself in contemporary trends within Iranian art, and she did so with crucial guidance from the artist whose work is seen here, Parviz Tanavoli. Tanavoli, one of Iran's most significant modern sculptors, an accomplished painter, influential teacher, and passionate art collector, first met Mrs. Gray in 1961. The two sustained a long friendship, with Gray supporting Tanavoli throughout his career. Today, the collection holds approximately 80 of Tanavoli's artworks, the largest number of works by the artist in any public institution in the world. In the work seen here, Prophet of 1964, Tanavoli employs an artistic vocabulary forged from utilitarian objects, its elements reminiscent of plumbing and ventilation systems, motors, and other machines. Arranged together in this cast bronze sculpture, the machine-inspired forms coalesce into an anthropomorphic figure representing a prophet, a mediator between the divine and terrestrial realms, thus rendering an archetype from Iranian tradition via emblems of modernity. Building upon Abby Weed Gray's legacy, the Gray continues to exhibit modern and contemporary art from the Middle East. One such artist is Shiva Ahmadi, whose artwork, Red Dots, of 2016, is seen here. As in much of Ahmadi's work, Red Dots draws upon traditional Persian art, while updating its imagery to reference present-day geopolitical conflict. Ahmadi was raised in Tehran during the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and the subsequent Iran-Iraq War, witnessing this turbulent period firsthand. She moved to Detroit to study fine art in 1998, and it was while living there that her childhood memories of Iraq's invasion of Iran were revived by America's 2003 invasion of Iraq. Executed in watercolor, ink, and acrylic, Red Dots is, though elaborately detailed, a small painting, measuring just 14 by 19 inches. It demonstrates Ahmadi's recent interest in depicting the ceremonial presentation of gifts as tribute to an enthroned monarch, iconography that recalls a tradition traceable to the rulers of ancient Persia. In Red Dots, this display of fealty takes on decidedly sinister overtones. Calligraphic lines imply the subject's bondage to their leader, while the titular red dots leave a blood-like spatter across the work's surface, echoing the red-stained garments on each depicted figure. Beyond the Abbey Weed Gray collection, the Gray has made it a focus to narrate downtown Manhattan's rich history of art making. As we turn to leave the present gallery, we encounter a group of 3 artworks by New York-based artists, including At Right, an unconventional print composed of embossed aluminum and collage by an artist whose long career was full of reinvention. This is Minna Citron's and Plata No. 1 of 1969. During the 1940s, Citron's work grew increasingly abstract after she joined the Greenwich Village-based printmaking studio Atelier 17, where an emphasis on the role of the unconscious in art making meshed with her own long-standing interest in Freudian theory, inspiring her to incorporate chance and accident into her work. And Plata No. 1 exemplifies the inventive approach to printmaking Citron honed at Atelier 17 and sustained until the end of her career. Chief among this work's several breaks with convention is that it forgoes printmaking's typical use of ink or pigment to produce an image. Instead, the work's metal surface has been embossed, resulting in a slightly raised image that is a literal imprint of physical, geometrical objects arranged into a kind of simple assemblage. Citron's use of reflective aluminum also ensures that this work's appearance perpetually and unpredictably shifts depending upon the conditions of its surrounding environment. In contrast, the circular cutout at the artwork's center remains stable and unchanging. Continuing through the exhibition, we come to a gallery devoted primarily to the New York School, the art scene that blossomed in New York City immediately following World War II, best known for a radically new, viscerally expressive style of painting called abstract expressionism. At the center of the New York School's creative and social scene was Frank O'Hara, a multi-talented figure, poet, critic, and curator at the Museum of Modern Art. O'Hara was also one of the collaborators who created the artwork seen here, together with the abstract expressionist painter Norman Bluhm. As the story goes, on a rainy Sunday in 1960, O'Hara was visiting Bluhm's studio on Park Avenue South when the two men fell into discussing a Prokofiev sonata that was playing on the radio. To illustrate a point he was making about the song, Bluhm picked up a brush and began to paint on a sheet of paper hanging from his studio wall. O'Hara responded in kind by spontaneously scribbling a few words on the same sheet. Before they knew it, they had created 27 collaborative artworks, 23 of which now reside in the NYU Art Collection. In this particular work, O'Hara has provided 3 short, matter-of-fact statements. There's an apple on the table. It's dawn. I die. With great efficiency, his language telescopes out from the quotidian and material. There's an apple on the table. To the cosmic and ephemeral. It's dawn. Before zooming back in on the profoundly individual. I die. In relationship to these enigmatic phrases, Bluhm's energetic and resolutely abstract brushstrokes gain fleeting connotations. Their red, black, and white tones could refer to the gleam of a ripe apple, or to light piercing through darkness at the start of day, or else to life extinguishing, like a candle flickering out. Now, we enter the photography gallery, which features work ranging from early European modernist photography up to more recent forays in color photography. Installed at its center are several images by the documentary photographer Danny Lyon from his landmark series, The Destruction of Lower Manhattan. Lyon moved into a Manhattan loft near the Brooklyn Bridge in 1966, just as the process known euphemistically as urban renewal had begun transforming the surrounding neighborhoods. His photographic project, executed over the course of a year, set out to preserve some amount of this history, while conveying the ground-level impact of massively scaled redevelopment schemes. Lyon was relatively young at the time, but he had already cut his teeth as a socially and politically partisan documentarian, a practitioner of what has come to be known as the new journalism. While serving for 2 years in the early 60s as staff photographer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee during the height of the Civil Rights Movement. In training his critical eye on the razing of large swaths of Lower Manhattan, Lyon developed a multifaceted picture, not only of these destructive events, but of New York City itself. His views of residences, hotels, offices, and artist lofts faded to meet the wrecking ball, seen from outside as well as inside, serve as records of the city's past, while also reveling in the pleasure of discovery that so often accompanies living in New York. Alongside Lyon's photographs, we see one by Tseng from the artist's East Meets West series of the late 1970s. Tseng was born in Hong Kong and raised in Vancouver, eventually settling in the East Village in 1979, the same year he took this photograph. In his East Meets West series, he adopts the character of a globe-trotting Chinese government official, posing before popular heritage sites like the Brooklyn Bridge in a parody of the foreign tourist avid for Western culture, or perhaps of the recent transplant to New York eagerly gaining his bearings. Through works like this one, Tseng crafted a creative practice that explored the dynamics of Asian American identity and their intersections with gay identity. Concurrently with his artistic work, he also documented Manhattan's vibrant nightlife and downtown art scene, including the lives and work of artists like his friend Keith Haring, whose poster is on view elsewhere in this exhibition. Issues of identity, whether grounded in race or ethnicity, sexuality, or gender, motivated many of the artists represented in the Gray's collection. Departing the photography gallery, we find another approach to these issues, embodied in this work by Joyce Kozloff, titled Mad Russian Blanket of 1977. Kozloff featured centrally in the pattern and decoration and feminist art movements of the 1970s, two radical aesthetic programs that emerged to challenge structures favoring men and Euro-American culture within the art world, and in society more generally. Pattern and decoration sought to elevate craft and ornamental traditions coded as feminine or associated with cultural foreignness. Creative practices that were, due to these associations, accorded a secondary status relative to the fine arts. Mad Russian Blanket exemplifies pattern and decoration's aims in its melding of geometric abstraction with patterning and colors drawn from traditional arts like textiles and quilting, crafts to which the artwork's title alludes. Looking closely, it is also evident how the artist has adopted techniques from these models, Kozloff having painstakingly composed the artwork from individual paper shapes, colored with pencil, that have been cut by hand and pieced together like a patchwork quilt. It is not a painting, but a work on paper, a category more commonly associated with sketches and studies than large-scale artworks. And it is handmade, soft, even fragile. A stark contrast to the minimalist art that predominated in the art world of the 70s. On a facing wall is a painting also possessing feminist overtones, Grace Hartigan's Myopic Marilyn, Feathers of 1989. Hartigan was an abstract expressionist whose work combined a bold gestural style with recognizable imagery sourced equally from old master paintings and mass culture. Hartigan's particular blend of abstraction and representation, and of culture's high and low, served what she identified in an artist statement of 1956 to be her subject, that which is vulgar and vital, she wrote, in American modern life. In Myopic Marilyn, vulgarity arrives through the artwork's reference to Marilyn Monroe, a Hollywood star more closely associated with the big screen and glossy magazines than with the art museum's hallowed halls. The vitality of popular taste, meanwhile, is expressed through the painting's monumental scale. Measuring 5 feet by 4 feet, it has the presence of a religious icon, supersized, and through the artist's agitated brushwork, which endows it with emotional immediacy. Hartigan had previously depicted Monroe in a 1962 painting that fragmented the icon's famous visage into scattered elements of eyes, lips, hair, and a gleaming smile. Instead, Myopic Marilyn offers viewers a nearly featureless woman, whose face has been obscured by a smear of cherry lipstick red and a powdery cloud of gray. There is a suggestion of the inaccessibility, even the erasure, of the individual who exists behind the mask of celebrity. Proceeding to the final gallery, we find several more artists who gained prominence during the 70s, 80s, and onward for their politically and socially engaged practices, as stridently engaged with contemporary issues as any of these artists was the one whose diptych we see at the far right, Frank Moore. Typically adopting a hallucinatory visual language, Moore's allegorical scenes offer a disenchanted view of American society. His best-known work directs an unflinching gaze toward the ravages of the AIDS crisis, ecological destruction, racism, homophobia, and other major issues. Moore's diptych, titled Swing of 1982, is an early work by the artist. Nonetheless, it shares its symbolic register with the increasingly complex allegories Moore would develop as his career progressed. 2 songbirds perch upon swings, suggesting the presence of a cage, the bars of which have morphed into music staves. These birds appear to have liberated themselves into a cloudless sky through their sung duets. Thus, though lacking the overt political edge of Moore's later work, the painting suggests a commentary on art's liberatory or transformative power. We conclude our tour with a cameraless photograph by Adam Foose, dating to 2006. Foose's practice draws upon the earliest chapters of photography's technical history. The double portrait seen here resembles a silhouette portrait, an art form extremely popular during the decades immediately preceding photography's introduction to the public in 1839. As photography would eventually accomplish, silhouettes, typically hand-cut from black paper, translate fleeting shadows into lasting images, offering a means of preserving sitters' profiles for posterity, while rendering them with great fidelity. Foose's update of this practice, made without a camera, as is typical of this British photographer's work, records light and shadows that have been cast directly onto photosensitive paper, collapsing photography together with one of its proto-photographic precedents. Our tour concludes here, in part, because of whom this artwork depicts: the art patrons, Dr. James Cottrell and Joseph Lovett. In 2021, the Gray announced a transformational gift from Cottrell and Lovett that includes over 200 artworks, many appearing in the present exhibition, and that will enable the creation of the Cottrell-Lovett Study Center, where faculty, students, and researchers will have more direct access to the NYU Art Collection. Included in this initial gift, and on view in Mostly New, are works by Cindy Sherman, best known for theatrical self-portraits that mine the universe of commercially produced images; Glenn Ligon, whose print from 2004 reproduces a page from a civil rights movement era Afrocentric coloring book, as colored in by a child at the turn of the 21st century. Deborah Cass, the creator of this preparatory sketch from 1989, which combines motifs from the work of painters Pat Steer and Lee Krasner with a depiction of Lucy from the comic strip Peanuts, to issue a cry of outrage at the art world's sidelining of influential women artists. Robert Mapplethorpe, whose photograph here belongs to a wider series from the early 1980s that depicted black men in states of undress in poses often recalling those of classical sculpture. Donald Batchelor, a prominent artist in the East Village scene of the 1980s, who depicts everyday objects with a childlike sincerity and studied artlessness, their imagery often pushed to the brink of abstraction. And Mary Heilman, a New York transplant who, over a long painting career, has created vividly colored, organic abstractions, frequently evoking the coastal landscape of her native California. Cottrell and Lovett have built their collection by cultivating long-term relationships with these and many other artists whose work moves them, many of these artists living and working in downtown New York. One of the through lines of Mostly New is how committed donors, from Abby Weed Gray to the collectors Cottrell and Lovett, to the many other generous supporters whose donations populate this show, have strengthened the Gray Art Gallery's ability to narrate eye-opening stories about art in New York City and globally. Thank you for joining this virtual tour of Mostly New, selections from the NYU Art Collection. This has been your guide, Samuel Allen. To learn more about this exhibition or the latest happenings at the Gray Art Gallery, visit the Gray's website at grayartgallery.nyu.edu.